The wind carried the scent of dust and horses, same as it always did on the edge of Dustwell Ridge. Morning sun spilled over the hills like honey, softening the sharpness of fences, the bite of chores. I was elbow-deep in a busted rail when I heard the rustle. Not the kind made by rabbits or the dry shift of tumbleweed. This one had a weight to it, a hush that didn't belong to the morning. I straightened, palms shading my eyes. The eastern fence line ran straight to the arroyo, and beyond it, the land dipped into government flats. Empty land, mostly. Nobody had business out that way unless they were sneaking or hiding. The movement came again. I dropped my hammer and moved slow. Real slow. Pa always said when you're unsure if it's a cougar or a boy, best to approach like it's both. I rounded the post, heart ticking steady, and that's when I saw it. A sack. Burlap. Stained and lumpy, sitting awkward in the shade of a mesquite. My first thought, someone left it there by mistake. My second, Lord, let it not be what I think. I crouched. Flies buzzed low around it. The thing shifted. I froze. Then from beneath it, a voice. We don't want your bread. Just take us. A girl's voice, dry and barely louder than breath. My fingers trembled as I reached for the edge of the sack and peeled it back. 2 children. Both girls. One older, maybe 9. The other could have been 5 if that. Dust clung to them like second skin. The smaller one was curled into the other's side, eyes open but unseeing, lips cracked and raw. The older girl blinked up at me, wide-eyed and waiting. I swallowed down the lump rising in my throat. What's your name, sweetheart? She didn't answer, just clutched the little one tighter. They weren't crying, not begging either, just waiting, like they'd already gone past fear and landed in something colder. I didn't need a sermon to know what I was looking at. These weren't strays. They weren't lost. They'd been dumped. All right, I murmured. All right, you're coming with me. I scooped up the smaller one first. She was light, too light, like a bird that hadn't eaten in days. The older girl stood on shaking legs, still silent, and followed. Her bare feet scraped the dirt, leaving little half-moons in the dust. The ranch house wasn't far. I whistled once and heard our old dog Bramble bark from the barn. Pa was out at the well, but I didn't wait to explain. I pushed through the back screen and laid the little one on Ma's old couch, still covered in the quilt she'd stitched before the fever took her. The older girl stood in the doorway, like she wasn't sure she had permission to breathe. You thirsty? I asked. She gave the smallest nod. I fetched water and biscuits, set them down without a word. She ate slow, chewing like it hurt. The little one stayed still, curled in on herself, her breath whisper thin. Pa came in just as I was wiping the child's face with a damp cloth. He didn't ask right away, just looked, took in the bruises, the eyes that didn't flinch, the silence. Then he knelt beside me and touched the girl's wrist. Gently. She say anything? Just that one line. Don't want bread, just take us. That's all. He nodded. Stood again. They from town? No, I looked up at him. I think they were meant to be forgotten. He let out a breath, long and slow. You trust him? I trust what I saw. He paused, then said, Then I do too. That's how it was with Pa. No lectures. No fuss. If I brought home a wounded crow, he'd make a box for it. If I brought home 2 half-starved ghosts in the shape of little girls, he'd keep quiet and build a plan. I learned the older one's name later that night. Dovey. She whispered it after I tucked them into the cot in the laundry room, the only extra space we had. Her name's Letty, she added, smoothing the blanket over the little one. She don't talk much. Does she need a doctor? Dovey hesitated, then nodded once. I didn't press for more. That night, I sat on the porch while Bramble laid his head in my lap, eyes on the yard like he knew something wasn't right. I watched the stars and listened to the night settle, but my mind kept circling back to what Dovey had said. We don't want your bread. What had been offered before, I wondered, that made bread sound like danger? What kind of life taught a girl to hide under a sack in the heat and wait for someone to come take her? Without crying, without pleading, there was a storm in that silence. I could feel it rumbling under her skin, coiled tight. Whatever their story was, I knew one thing already. They weren't going back, and I wasn't letting go. By morning, the ranch had already changed. The air felt different, not heavier but watchful. Like even the walls were waiting to see what I'd do, with two quiet shadows now tucked inside them. Pa went about his chores like usual, but I caught him glancing toward the laundry room more than once. Dovey had barely said 2 full sentences, and Letty hadn't spoken at all. I got the sense the older one carried not just her own silence, but her sister's too. After breakfast, I filled the washtub on the back porch and coaxed Dovey into letting me help them bathe. She didn't flinch at the cold water or the soap. Didn't even blink when I peeled back her shirt and saw the bruises, yellowing, old, and one still dark like it hadn't been there long. Her ribs stuck out like dry branches. Letty cried softly when I touched her shoulder, but Dovey hushed her with a finger to her lips. I wrapped them both in towels and sat with them under the sun until their skin dried and the warmth soaked in. "You ever been to school?" I asked. Dovey stared out toward the field. "Know your letters?" She nodded slowly. "Where'd you come from?" She didn't answer. I didn't push. Words weren't what they needed. Not yet. By noon, Pa and I decided they needed a doctor. Not just for the bruises, but the hollowness in their eyes. We hitched up the wagon, and I bundled them in the back with fresh water and a jar of pickled eggs. Neither touched it. The town of Dry Bluff wasn't but 5 buildings and a church steeple, but it still felt like stepping into another world. I knew the looks were coming before we even rolled past the feed store. Folks in a town like this, small, tight-lipped, and sun-baked, they notice everything. I spotted Mrs. Turley before she saw us. Wide hat, red skirt, lips pinched like she'd been sucking lemons since last week. Her husband sat on the council. Always walked like he thought God was watching just him. When I lifted Dovey and Letty down, she turned. "Well now," she said, drawing out each word like they were stitched with suspicion. "That's quite the little collection you've got, Willa Grant." "They're children, not strays," I said coolly. I didn't mean offense. She stepped closer, studying the girls like she was inspecting livestock. "I just heard Birch Creek Orphan House had 2 girls run off last month. Seems a strange coincidence, don't you think?" Dovey stiffened beside me. Letty pressed against my skirt. "I wasn't aware you'd taken up martial duties," I said. Mrs. Turley gave a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "No need to get sharp, dear. Just concerned for everyone's safety. You know how rumors get started." I looked her dead in the eye. Sometimes rumors are safer than the truth. She faltered, then moved on, skirts swishing. At the doctor's office, old Doc Ellery took one look at the girls, and his face turned to stone. He was a hard man, drank too much coffee, never married, and didn't take to gossip. But he had the kind of hands that fixed what others gave up on. He checked their ribs, eyes, pulses, made no fuss about the scars. Didn't ask questions he knew he wouldn't get answers to. Afterward, he handed me a small bottle of medicine and said, "They need rest, clean water, and patience. The younger one's lungs are tight. Watch her at night. Will they be all right?" He paused. "Not for a while, but they will be." As I turned to go, he added, "And Willa, steer clear of anyone asking too many questions. Town's full of people more curious than kind." I nodded. The ride back was quiet. Letty fell asleep against Dovey's side, and the older girl kept her eyes on the horizon. She didn't speak, but I felt it in her, the way she stayed alert, the way her fingers never stopped moving. She was watching for danger, even now. Back at the ranch, I laid Letty in the cot, then sat beside Dovey on the porch. "You knew that woman," I said gently. She looked away. "Was she at that place?" "Birch Creek." Her jaw tightened. "You don't have to tell me. But if someone hurt you, if someone's still looking for you." "She sold us," Dovey whispered, her voice raw. "Said we were too small for work, but still good for chores. Sent Letty off once to a man with bad hands." I took her back. I didn't speak. Dovey kept going. Then she said we were just trouble. Put us in a cart, drove us near the flats, and dumped us. Said if we were smart, we'd die quiet. I stared out over the pasture, the muscles in my neck pulling tight. "You're not going back," I said. She looked at me, finally meeting my eyes. "You don't even know us." "I don't need to. You're mine now." Dovey blinked hard and nodded once. Just once. That night, while Letty slept curled in a quilt and Dovey lay awake beside her, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the flame of a lantern. Pa came in, poured himself coffee, didn't say a word. Finally, I spoke. "They were left to die. Pa left like garbage. He didn't flinch, just sipped slow and said, "Then I guess we make sure they live like they're worth something." I swallowed hard and nodded. Outside, a coyote howled. But inside that small ranch house, the girls were warm. Federal safe for now, but I knew it wouldn't last. Not with folks like Mrs. Tully sniffing around. And I had the feeling the worst hadn't found us yet. The wind turned sharp that morning, snapping at the clothesline and stirring dust from the barn rafters. I was feeding the hens when Bramble gave a low growl, deep, steady, not a bark but a warning. He stood rigid at the edge of the porch, hackles lifted. I wiped my hands and followed his gaze. A rider was approaching from the south, alone, tall in a saddle, coat flapping like crow wings. The sun caught a glint of metal at his hip, and though he looked relaxed, something about his pace, measured, deliberate, made the hair rise on the back of my neck. I met him near the fence, one hand resting on the gate. "Morning," he said, tipping his hat. "Morning," I replied, not returning the gesture. "Name's Rook Bixby. I ride for state authority, tasked with collecting what don't belong to folks." He dismounted like he had all the time in the world. Up close, he looked lean and snake-eyed, with a pale scar curling under his chin and disappearing behind his collar, like a rope once kissed his neck and left its mark. "I'm told there's 2 girls out this way." He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Supposed to be in state care. You seen anything of that sort?" "State care," I repeated, voice flat. "Yes, ma'am. Came from the Birch Creek orphan home. Ran off. That place has laws, same as anywhere." I met his stare. Far as I can tell, they didn't run off. They were thrown out. He cocked his head. "That's so. They were left for dead." "Well now," he said, adjusting his gloves, "we all see stories different when feelings get in the way. But facts don't change. Those girls ain't yours, Miss Grant. You're not registered as a guardian, nor do you have adoption papers. Harboring them puts you at odds with the law." Bramble took a step forward, teeth bared. I put a hand on his head. "They're safe here, and they're not going anywhere with a man like you." That smile again. "I understand your heart's involved, but let me be clear. You're interfering with state authority. You don't want that kind of trouble." Pa stepped out onto the porch then, shotgun resting casually over his shoulder. "You best ride on," he said evenly, "before the girls wake up and see you." Bixby studied him for a long second, then turned back to me. "I'll be back, with ink and warrants." He tipped his hat this time, and I watched him ride away, back straight, as if he wasn't leaving so much as circling. That evening, I found Dovey sitting under the old oak with Letty asleep in her lap. She was braiding blades of grass together with careful fingers. "Man came today," I said gently. "He wants to take you back." Her hands stilled. "To Birch Creek? Or worse? Says it's the law." She nodded slowly, eyes on the braid. "I don't know how long we can keep you safe here," I admitted, "but I'm going to try. That's a promise." She looked up at me, expression unreadable. "If he comes, and we're gone, don't look for us." The words hit like a slap. "Don't say that. Letty's little. She won't survive another place like that. We'll run if we have to." I crouched beside her. "You shouldn't have to run. Not anymore." Her voice cracked. "He sold girls to people, one by one, like horses. The ones that cried too much got punished. The ones that looked pretty got picked first." My breath caught. "I kept Letty quiet," she whispered. "I made sure they didn't see her. She wasn't 9 years old anymore. Not really. She was something older, rawer, shaped by shadows. And she was scared. I'll protect you," I said again, softer this time. She didn't respond, just went back to braiding grass. That night, someone shot at the barn. The crack echoed sharp in the still air. Bramble barked and took off into the dark. Pa and I ran out, guns drawn. No one in sight. Just a smoldering bullet hole in the siding and hoof prints headed south. He was warning us, or toying with us. Either way, he was close. Back inside, I found Dovey curled up beside her sister, eyes wide open in the dark. "He won't stop," she said. "He never does." "He might not," I replied. "But neither will I." Her voice was barely audible. "What?" I sat on the floor beside them, hand resting gently on the quilt. "Because someone should have fought for you a long time ago, and it's too late to stand by now." Outside, the wind had picked up, Storm clouds gathered over the ridge. We all knew it wouldn't be long. By sunrise, the wind had stilled, but it wasn't peace I felt. It was the hush before a reckoning. I watched the girls eat their breakfast in silence, Dovey helping Letty with her spoon like she'd done 100 times before. There was something in her eyes that morning, something braced, as if she knew the world was about to ask too much of her again. I'd barely finished tying my boots when a knock sounded at the front door. Not a timid one. 3 firm raps. The kind a man uses when he's holding a badge or a gun, or both. I opened it slow. Rook Bixby stood tall on the porch, dust on his coat, warrant papers in one hand, smug assurance in the other. Behind him stood 2 more men. Hired, not official. One had a scar under his eye, and the other a crooked nose that looked like it had been broken more than once. You had your chance, Bixby said. Now you've got 30 seconds to hand over state property. I didn't answer. Just stepped back and let Palm move into view behind me, shotgun steady in his hands. This ain't state business, Pa said calmly. It's theft, dressed up with a ribbon. Bixby raised an eyebrow. You want to be arrested for interfering with retrieval? You willing to lose everything over 2 cast-offs? From the corner of the hallway, Dovey's voice rang out, steady and sharp. We're not property. She stepped forward then, holding Letty's hand. The little one clung to her, wide-eyed but calm. Bixby's eyes narrowed. That ain't your call to make. I think it is, said a new voice from behind him. All heads turned. Doc Ellery was there, mounting the steps with a piece of paper in his hand. Behind him came Miss Janice, the retired schoolteacher, with her long gray braid tucked into a shawl and eyes like flint. This here, Doc said, waving the document, is a sworn affidavit signed by me and Miss Janice, testifying to the abuse suffered by these girls. I sent it to the county judge last night. Bixby's mouth tightened. That orphanage was shuttered 2 months ago, Miss Janice added. No court approved your continued collection of wards. What you've been doing is illegal. Every child you've sold is proof. Don't you come preaching, Bixby growled, stepping toward her. But before he could move another inch, Bramble leapt from the side of the porch with a deep snarl, landing square between them. He didn't bark, just stood, shoulders low, teeth bared. Warning made flesh. Bixby froze. For the first time, he looked uncertain. Leave, I said, before you find out how quick justice comes out here. Scarface and Crooked Nose hesitated, eyes flicking between Bramble and Pa's shotgun. Then, like cowards always do, they stepped back. Bixby stared at me long and hard, then at Dovey. This ain't over, he said. Yes, it is, Dovey answered. Her voice didn't shake. He spat in the dirt, turned, and walked away. The others followed. Doc let out a breath and tipped his hat. Judge will want to meet them tomorrow, Willa. But they'll be safe now. Law's catching up. When they left, the house felt different. The storm had passed, but its echo lingered in the walls. I sat with the girls on the porch steps as the sun climbed higher, burning off the last chill of morning. You did it, I said softly to Dovey. She looked up at me, blinking. No, you did. Letty leaned into me, her tiny hand wrapping around my arm. For the first time since I found them, she smiled. A small, crooked thing, but real. They don't get to decide what we are anymore, Dovey whispered. No, I agreed. They don't. That night, we celebrated with warm biscuits and peach preserves. Pa even brought out Ma's old fiddle and played a crooked tune none of us knew the name to. Dovey laughed once, short and startled, like it surprised her. Later, when the girls were tucked in, I sat on the porch and watched the sky stretch out above us. Vast and endless and new. They hadn't wanted bread. They hadn't asked for charity or kindness or even love. They just wanted someone to take them. And somehow, in the taking, they'd given me more than I'd ever expected. They'd given me back myself.